Welcome back to Morning Express. It is now just about 7 o'clock and it's time for us to get into the political point. In case you're joining us now, a quick reintroduction of the guests that I have in studio. We have Ndugu Githinji, we have Barack Muluka, and Professor Wajakoya. It's time for political point. And let's start off actually on the headlines of the Daily Nation today. We didn't look at that, but it is part of what we'd like to discuss this morning. Fearing ugly scenes, Jubilee calls off talks. And of course, there's been word going round that there is trouble in the camp of Jubilee. So let me start with you, Ndugu Githinji, on the fact, is there trouble within Jubilee? Especially after the handshake between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, there seems to be some voices that are not too happy or too pleased with what's going on in the party.
Well, I can only speak as an observer because I'm not a member of the party, and I can speak from the outside as an observer and a former member and a member of the public and a consumer of the media. You can see.
So you're no longer part of, are you no longer in Jubilee?
You forget that I'm still currently the Secretary General of the Kenya Alliance of Independent Candidates, and we formed the KAIC after the botched nominations of the Jubilee Party. And we created this organization to, amalgamate all the independent candidates who were in support of Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency. There are other independent candidates who were in support of Right Honorable Raila Odinga's presidency. So the KIC was really that, and we are supporting Jubilee, but not Jubilee. As an observer, I can.
But that sounds somehow confusing to say that you're supporting Jubilee but not Jubilee.
We're not members of the party.
Oh, you're not members of the party.
We're not members of the party.
But you're in support of Uhuru Kenyatta as
president.
Indeed,
we are supportive of Uhuru Kenyatta's candidature. We came out in the public and during our convention where we endorsed our candidate, who was Uhuru Kenyatta, for the presidency. And we made that very clear. As a consumer of the media, like I was going to say, and an observer of politics, you can see all is not well. All is not well. You can see that some of the leaders, there is some degree of infighting within the party, pitting some leaders against the other on an ideology of, are we meant to be working on our legacy now or campaigning for 2022? So that rift is obvious. I mean, everybody can see it. You don't need to be a genius. As much as people want to deny it, it is very clear. Even some of the utterances on the floor of the House, which are very instructive, even by leaders as high as the leader of the majority himself, are showing that there is clearly some discord in the party amongst the ranks. Because some of those things that are said surely do not augur well for unity within the party. I mean, you cannot say certain things on the floor of the House about your party and your colleagues and it be business as usual. As for the PG, I think that I wouldn't want to say a creation of the media, but it was clear from the presser by the Secretary General yesterday, Honorable Raphael Tuju, that there was never any PG.
Right.
There was never one called. He was very clear that there are 2 PGs a year, which are prescribed in their constitution, and therefore one wonders where that notion
came from.
Where it came from.
Well, the media has been accused of having created it, but in all honesty, there are certain Jubilee members who had said there is a PG coming up, but that, of course, having come from the SecGen, then we want to believe that there is no PG and we'll wait and see. But let me come to you, Barack Muluka, on your thoughts on what's happening now, given that we ought to be concentrating as a country on development. We've just looked at some of the taxes that Kenyans are likely to face if this goes through, vis-a-vis the collapse of some of the industries that we expect to support the very livelihoods of Kenyans. But here we are discussing, and on the political scene, looking at 2022. Many Kenyans really don't care, or their circumstances don't help them to care about 2022. We care about now.
Now, we must care about 2022, particularly when we see some of the people who are fronting themselves up for 2022. We know their track record, we know their history, and when they particularly go to the hustings and they're saying all the time that it's about me in 2022, that some people are trying to throw hurdles in the way. We cannot ignore that and say that we are going to talk about development. Development and politics go hand in glove. We talk about in social science about such things, notions as political economy, what kind of strategic thrust are the people in power thinking about, what strategic thrust are those outside power thinking about. When we look at the Big Four agenda, for example, how do we contextualize it within the broad prism of political, economic thinking? And people who get elected into government start from day one to run programs that seek to have them re-elected, even when they are retiring, like we expect that President Kenyatta will be retiring. They would like to see their party staying on in power. And the kind of development agenda that they embrace has got a political end in sight. Those outside the government are also gearing up and looking at what government is doing, and more often than not, trying to see the loopholes in that. And so it is all politics. And then finally, the question that you raise about whether all is well or not in that house, we have often said that when an alligator comes out of the sea and tells you that crocodile is unwell, you have to believe that crocodile is unwell. And here we have had not one alligator, but two alligators. We have had alligator Dwale and alligator Murkomen coming out to say
not all is well.
Is not well.
Okay. Professor, your thoughts on how things are going in the Jubilee Party, given that it's also the party that is meant to be or mandated as government currently?
I would like to say that the Rift Valley part of Jubilee is the one that has rocked Jubilee Party. And Jubilee Party is in the ICU right now, and let nobody lie to anybody. Because you have also seen them trooping to Madame Lucy Ndung'u's office, trying to revive URP. They were told this cannot happen. They have also been trying to form political parties. And we have also seen some of them. Really? A senator coming out, telling the president to withdraw that handshake from Raila because it's interfering.
Leader of majority.
Surely it's interfering with Ruto's vote to presidency in 2022. Some members of parliament from Murang'a, another senator from Murang'a coming up and saying, tuko na deni ya Ruto, tutataka kulipa yeye. Surely we have 44 tribes in this country. Was this presidency meant for the Kikuyus and Kalenjins vis-a-vis from one hand to the other? Mediocres. That's what we have in this country.
Ndungu Githinji, you're part of the group that possibly met with Raila, and some sections of Jubilee felt that possibly there is an alignment that is coming between Central and Nyanza. Your comments on that, because it's part of the handshake, and maybe there are those who look at it as mending fences and a time where Kenya needs to come together, regardless of what part of the country you come from, and let's deal with ideology. But there are those who feel that the disgruntled, or let me say those who didn't make it into parliament this time round, are ganging up together with Raila to destabilize the other side.
I am part of the group that was privileged to have a sitting, to have a working lunch with His Excellency Raila Odinga last week. And for those who are keen watchers of the media and followers of recent history, they will know that a group of us, myself included, at the height of the election crisis, at the height of, right after the nullification of the election and prior to the second election that was held, seeing the tension that was in this country, seeing that the country was cleaved right down the middle, and seeing that, those ethnic balkanization of the country, which was risking the entire future of the country, including, very high tensions, the economic future of the country and so on, we realized that a house divided against itself cannot stand, and something must be done. And we issued a statement on October 15th, myself, Honorable Kavogo, Honorable Martha Karua, Honorable Kabando Akabando, and several other leaders who were there. And we issued a statement requesting that His Excellency the President reach out, seek dialogue with His Excellency Raila Odinga. And we don't have to be there. We just wanted the two of them. We didn't set an agenda just to get together in a room. And even just the image of the two of them together and shaking hands would have reduced temperatures to zero at that point in time. As it so happened, when we did that on the 15th. We came out again on the 19th of October, 2017, and again issued the same statement. We were abused. We were called names. We were called NASA sympathizers. I don't know why that is a bad thing. Everybody has a political affiliation. We were abused. We were saying we were sellouts and so on and so forth. But you see, in Kikuyu, we have a saying that a mudhuri, an elder, sitting on a stool, sees further than a small boy standing on top of a tree. So a person or people or groups of people who have the vision to call for dialogue and unity of the nation is not a bad thing. And ultimately, we were vindicated because the President and Honorable Raila Odinga came together and shook hands. That handshake has created a huge peace dividend in this country. And that peace dividend is really the foundation and the building block of everything else that we're going to do in this country, economically, politically, socially, and so on. Without that peace, you can talk about Big Four till the cows come home and it will never happen. You can talk about the economy, it will never happen. You can talk about corruption, it will never happen. You can talk about 2022.
It will not happen.
And it will not happen. So those who are saying, the naysayers, every nation has them. But what I would say to them is we need to look back in history. And in fact, I was very honored. His Excellency Raila Odinga gave us a good history lesson. Many of us are young Kenyans, young politicians, and we don't have the benefit, apart from what we read in history books, of the experiences that have happened from independence till now. And he gave us a very candid, chronology of what had happened with personal anecdotes, personal history. And it inspired many of us. In fact, I even came with my copy of Not Yet Uhuru, which I had bought 25 years ago and I haven't read.
I haven't read it yet.
I haven't read it, but I'm reading it now.
Okay.
And let me finish. So what I was going to say is that those people who feel threatened by the handshake should have peace.
What's the strategy, do you think, between now your alliance and that of Raila Odinga? Because politically speaking, there has to be capital.
Look, I mean, and I like, when some leaders are going around saying, oh, they're disgruntled or they're not elected. Leadership is a covenant of trust bestowed on a person by the community that they serve, okay? So it's not about being elected. Raila Odinga is not elected, but he is a leader. He is a very powerful leader in this country, to the extent that the president himself had to look for him and shake his hand, okay? Malcolm X was not elected by anybody. Martin Luther King was not elected by anybody. So leadership is a covenant of trust bestowed on people.
Okay.
So it's not about whether we're elected or not. We have a constituency which has bestowed their trust on us and other leaders who are there. And we owe it to ourselves, to our future generations, to create an environment which is, a peaceful environment for the country to build on. Because without that peace, this country is going nowhere.
It's going nowhere. Barak, your comments on the fact that, where does that leave the opposition? Because with now Raila and Uhuru, coming together, the peace is there, yes, but there seems to have been slowdown, or maybe the tone has changed in terms of now keeping the government to account, taking the government to account. Where does that leave the opposition?
First, I think that which we call peace, the peace of any country, should not be predicated against the whims of any one or two individuals. It means that we have lost sight of the fundamental factors that people were agitating about. It was, in my view, never about Raila Odinga being proximate to Uhuru Kenyatta and the two of them working together, they represented each in a normal political context certain very fundamental concerns about where the country should go, about how the country should be governed, about two different possible strands of leadership and leading the country, and the kind of economy that we wanted to build, the kind of redistribution that we wanted to build. If we talked about inclusion and exclusion, and it was thought that at that time the country was in the grip of an ethnic duopoly between, as Professor Wajakoya here would say, the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin, the bringing of one more eating chief on the table with a slew of an ethnic elite from his own community does not change issues. And therefore, fundamentally, the concerns that the political opposition has usually wrapped its minds around and raised in the public market of ideas still remains. And these are issues which have been spoken about. You saw that interview in the Standard on Sunday where my party leader, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, was being asked the question, where are you people? We are not hearing you. And it's again a question of where the media elects to focus its lenses. If the media, who are the gatekeepers of public information and knowledge, determine that one individual is the opposition, and that once he's no longer articulating issues from an opposition platform, then nothing is being
So in
said.
your opinion, is the opposition still alive? And where does that leave NASA? I recently saw the
opposition is alive and well. I'm a member of the opposition in this country, and we have been saying things time and again. We have issued statements, we have called the press and spoken to them. But when they decide that they should tack that somewhere inside the papers, when you look at the issues of the sugar, we were among the very first people to speak about them, spoken about NYS. We talked about taxation, these taxes. Musalia Mudavadi talked about taxes before even the budget speech was presented in Parliament. It was tucked somewhere inside the daily press. The TV stations did not air it at all. It is now here, it's starting to take front pages. It's not as if somebody from the opposition did not talk about them. And do you remember, I was here, seated right here, when I was talking about the capital gains tax, I was talking about income tax, and then there are all these other appendages. In the media, we are told that we are the gatekeepers. What we allow to go through gets to the public. What we stop, like getting even here today, I had to go through the gate, and the gatekeepers had to allow me
to come through.
So we must ask,
what
are the gatekeepers doing?
Professor, your thoughts on where we are and possibly whether, like, Barack says, maybe it's the media that's focusing the lens on the wrong places. Maybe the opposition is still speaking.
First of all, who owns the media? That's number one. If you can answer me that question, I'll be very grateful. And secondly, why do you have this hegemony of the Mois, the Kenyattas, and the Odingas sitting at the epic of this country? Thirdly, don't you have any
One might
other,
say it's the electorate that has allowed them to sit there.
Plus corruption and hegemony of corruption. I'm not going to mix my words. Let's look at countries that have come out of this kind of hegemonic regimes. And fourthly, why do you think that these people are born with special umbilical cords with different colors than the ones some of us were born with? The task still goes to the Kenyans on the streets. I've heard him for the first time. I've never met him before, but this is a leader. When he speaks, I tickle here. Why haven't I known him before? Fifthly, why can't we come out with another regime of young crop of leadership? Must we have them Mudavadis? Must we have them Wetangula, or when they're out of the form, Wetangula's son? Must we have this hegemonic kind of lineage of leadership in this country? Sorry, time will come when we shall have other discourse to take place
All
in
right.
the shifting paradigm.
Okay, Barak, how do we deal with that? Because it seems, again, that we have the same people recycled, we have the same leaders recycled, and it's not because Kenya is short of leaders. We have many voices that are speaking, but because possibly they have not had an equal platform to have their voices heard, maybe they're ignored.
You see, Mheshimiwa Ndung'u has talked about what he called a covenant of trust between those who at the forefront who lead and those who are at the back. In fact, there is a serious conflation of issues in this country, and when we keep on bringing in, as a professor here is doing, the age card and stuff like that. Mahathir Mohamad, whom Mheshimiwa and Githinji was talking about, is 92 years old, 92. 8 short years away from
100.
being a centenary. And he had been there before. A younger person came in, took over, and ran the economy as if it was a thieves' brigade. We are seeing the same here. We had Mwai Kibaki, who was much older than the people who are in power today. And there are certain things we can say were achieved under the Mwai Kibaki regime, in spite of all the noise that sound and fury that was being made around him. He had certain focus, and he stayed focused. This is the question of the political philosophy that informs our choice and process of choosing leaders, that it's based on some very narrow prisms. I'm happy that Mheshimiwa Ndung'u Githinji is going to read Not Yet Uhuru for the first time to understand what led to the fallout between Jomo Kenyatta and Jaramogi Odinga, and which is at the basis of that which ails us. That Jaramogi Odinga was saying, look, this is not the independence that we fought for. We did not fight for independence so that a few people could grab all the land in the country. And he was pointing his fingers at Jomo Kenyatta as basically a land grabber. And he would go on to repeat and say that again and again, that Kenyatta was a land grabber. And if you are in doubt, find out how much land that estate left behind. And he was telling particularly the people from central Kenya that, look, your involvement in this was basically around land issues. And this land must be returned to you because these were stolen lands. And someone was saying, look at this Luo. He wants to take government away from us. And someone was also saying, oh, look at these Kikuyus. They've taken all the power, and they're eating, in spite of the fact that there were lots of Kikuyu people who are very poor and who remain very poor up to this moment. You go to the place called Kikuyu itself, where they were displaced to as early as 1903, when Charles Eliot began the land drama in this country. People have lost sight of the fundamental concerns and issues, and it's disappointing that even leaders like Mheshimiwa here, whom I respect very much, and who have previously opposed certain sentiments that have been expressed about property and the way it's managed in this country, have yet to get to the bottom of the fundamentals that drove us apart. Why was Bidad Kagia marginalized? Why did Kungu Karumba disappear just one day like that in the 1970s, and we have never seen him again? We have never heard of him again. He disappeared.
All right. And because of time, just to manage time, Ndung'u Githinji, you wanted to respond to that, but as you do that, just to give us maybe as we wrap up, and maybe your closing comments as well, where we are as a country seems not too far off from where we were some time ago, especially when it comes to our ethnic division. The fact that if Raila and Uhuru are shaking hands, some people see it as purely communities coming together, as opposed to a country that is possibly healing. Your closing comments and possibly solution as to where we need to go as a country.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that I'm happy that, first of all, that His Excellency the President and Raila Odinga have come together. That is not merely symbolic. You see, the ethnicization of politics in this country has come from the rifts that were created just after independence. And those rifts were not ethnic in their formation or in creation. Those rifts, as Barak clearly said here, were ideological. But today, if you ask people in central Kenya, what the rift is with people of Nyanza, they can't point to a single thing. But they will know that the people of Nyanza are not their friends. They will know the people of Nyanza ni wale watu huko and hawataki anything to do with them. You see? So the internalization of ethnicity or negative ethnicity has penetrated us so deep that we don't even know where the rain started beating us. And this is the point that Raila Odinga made to the meeting that we participated in. And this was also part of the point that they were discussing with His Excellency the President when they were shaking hands, when they were doing the negotiations for the handshake, is that what is the root cause, the square root of the differences between our two communities? Because like it or not, the Kikuyu, with the alignment, the political alignment that they have now established over time, and the people of Nyanza and the political alignment that they have established over time have actually cleaved the country in half. So it is not to say that it is only these two communities. No, it is all the communities which align themselves with them that is causing this political rift and an ethnic rift in our country. So once we understand that the root cause of this rift was not ethnic, is not ethnic, then the people of Mount Kenya can understand that the people of Nyanza are not their enemies. And the people of Nyanza can also understand that the people of Mount Kenya are not their enemies. And once that trust is established, people have openness to dialogue, to unification, and even political, alignment and union. And that can only be a good thing for the country at large, because if we can align with the people of Nyanza, we can align with the people of Western and Muhoroni and elsewhere. And we can align with the people of Coast. And it only augurs well for unity of the nation, because ultimately, let me tell you, this myth that we have been sold as Africans on this continent, that the more we divide ourselves ethnically or politically, is a kind of a modicum or a badge or a token to show how advanced we are, how modern we are, is exactly that. It is a myth.
It's a myth.
Unity is strength. If we are united, if we work together, if we don't have to have, ethnic or political divides, we can work in unison and in unity. And with that strength, we can work on the weaknesses that
All
are
right.
our challenges.
Professor, your closing comments?
I'm very grateful to what my two colleagues here have said. And I can happily say that I'm not a young man. I'm 59. I'll be 60 next year. So I think I wanted to reveal it to him that I'm not young, as it was said before. Alleged before. I'm a grandfather. And I'm retiring from teaching this semester.
Too early.
To go back into academia. But having had it all, the ethnicity card is played by the government. If you look at Uhuru appointments and you look at Ruto's appointments, you'll be shocked to your bones. The first Uhuru government, the first Ruto Uhuru government that exists, actually symbolized ethnicity, whereby a series of certain jobs that came in as a result of lobbying, tribal lobbying syndrome, which these people should get out. So the reminiscent of mediocres being appointed.
Solution. We need a solution.
Yeah. The solution is the president should take the Museveni syndrome, should look outside those who are around him and those lobbyists and those brokers and those ministers who come in and those tribalists who lead delegations to State House, and throw his eyes out in the diaspora, look at the Kenyans in the diaspora. What can they do, just like Museveni did when he borrowed from the World Bank to help him bring those academic minds to come and resuscitate the economy. The issue of tribal appointments, like we are seeing today, is actually fermenting ethnicity in the country. The president should come out and say, look, let me look at Barack Muluka. What can he offer in this government? Come directly without some mediocres coming around him and saying, you know, this is our son. Can we do like this? Once we have that syndrome out of their mindset, then Kenya will become a very good place.
Barack Muluka, your closing comments, sir?
There is something called state capture. And state capture quite often begins even before the government is in place. They're the people who own the government, the ones who have put it in place. All those choppers we see flying all over the place, the billions that are splashed on election campaigns, the people who are buying shares in government. And when that government is installed, they expect their return on investment. And those are the people you are seeing as sugar barons, as the maize barons, as the NYS barons. We have got to address the issue of state capture. Very fundamentally, there must be accountability on where you are getting funds for funding elections. We know that attempts have been made several times to put ceilings on elections. And this state capture is not just concentrated and limited at the national government. You are seeing it all the way into county government. We must address that as a very serious issue. And once again, the media has a fundamental agenda-setting role in that regard.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We will have to wind up there because of time. Professor Wajakoya, Ndugu Githinji, and Barack Muluka, thank you for joining us this morning. It is now 7:30. We want to take a short break, but we will leave you with a traffic update of what is happening again on the Kenyatta Avenue roundabout. But do stay with us. We still have more stories making headlines coming up right here on Morning Express.